is NTV.
Good evening, and just in time for the day's top stories from our NTV newsroom.
We will deliver judgment on the 20th.
Petitions hearing done. Now President Kenyatta awaits his fate on Monday next week.
Opposition leaders in cat and mouse games with police ahead of Raila's return tomorrow.
Duale blows whistle on alleged diversion of funds in opposition counties to political causes.
Confusion after DPP stops police from charging late Nyeri governor's driver.
NTV Tonight with Smriti, Vidyarthi and Mark Masai.
Thanks for joining us. Our sign language interpretation is being held by Flora Atiano tonight.
Now, the Supreme Court will decide on Monday whether to uphold President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election or send Kenyans back to the ballot for the third time.
On the final day of the hearing of the petition challenging Uhuru's re-election, lawyers for the respondents asked the court to uphold the win, saying it would be unfair to nullify the election based on the fact that not all 291 constituencies participated.
Leila Mohammed brings us the highlights.
The Supreme Court this evening dimmed the lights on an application by Kurayangu Sautiyangu and Muhuri to present to the court a report of an audit of all Forms 34A, B and C and a certified copy of the voters' register. Justice David Maraga clarified that the second petitioner was only going to be allowed to give his comments on what they saw at the audit.
It is a basic rule that in scrutiny, you wish to have scrutiny on anything, you must lay a basis in your petition.
In their submission after an audit, the petitioner found that the petitioners had downloaded material that the IEBC had availed at their website. The IEBC had also availed a hard drive. When they looked at both documents, it was evident that there were inconsistencies in the documents.
The returning officer, the constituency returning officer, should fill the handover as is handing over, and the national returning officer should fill the takeover as they're taking over, and on that basis, they verify, and then that is the Form 34B.
We gave those documents knowing that some of these allegations might come up, but to help the court make a just and fair determination that if there is any human intervention that might arise, do you have a control mechanism?
President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his submissions earlier in the day, asked the court to uphold his victory by stating that the IEBC tried its best to work within the law, yet there were certain quarters that caused violent insurgencies to deny some Kenyans their right to vote.
Request being the incentive to do wrong. An incentive to do wrong would be that a person who now wants to enjoy or benefit from his wrongdoing.
If you elect not to exercise your right and you have slept on it, the consequential factors that are triggered by that, or the consequential factors that are triggered by those who elected to vote, you should sit out in that process. You can't say that I will not participate in this election and then say that this election is wrong because of A, B, C, and D.
The issue of violence being used in the case to urge the court to agree that some quarters of the political class used violence to block some parts of the country not to participate in the vote was heavily discussed, with the respondents, including the Attorney General, insisting that this was against the rule of law.
You will still have to go back to what is the standard, what is the proof, what you need. It must be systematic, it must be widespread, it must be intended, and that the existence of those facts must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Not by my friend Mr. Mr. Dombi. It's not for Mr. Dombi to speak from the bar. It is for witnesses who claim to have been so affected to do so.
The issue of the withdrawal of Raila Odinga from the October 26th poll was also highlighted. President Uhuru Kenyatta saying his opponent willingly abandoned the race instead of legally withdrawing according to the law. But with the Justice Mativo ruling to allow Ekuru Aukot to run in the race, Uhuru Kenyatta, through his lawyer, could not explain himself on the legal process that would follow if only two candidates were in the race and one pulls out.
The Mativo judgment was on the 11th of October.
Yes.
But 5 days earlier, IBC has said only 2 people are participating.
Theoretical, oblivious of the period of 60 days that the authority would then have called for nominations. But from a practical angle, it would have been difficult for nominations to take place because of the 60-day period.
The president's lawyers argue that the merits of the fresh petition should be dissected based on the contested Electoral Amendment Act that came into law even after President Uhuru Kenyatta said that his conscience could not allow him to sign a bill that would give him an upper hand among his competitors.
First, we start with the presumption that a statute is constitutional unless a contrary position is demonstrated. In my submission, no contrary position is demonstrated.
In his submission, lawyer Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi urged the court to throw out the case as it is a means by civil society to seek international donor funding through the litigation process.
Yes, we will deliver judgment on the 20th.
With the main bulk of the presidential petition submissions finally over, Kenyans are now looking forward to the next few days when the Supreme Court judges will be expected to deliver their judgment on the second time for this presidential petition. Leila Mohammed, NTV, Nairobi.
Now, MPs Babu Owino and TJ Kajwang were arrested today as they rode on motorbicycles to gain access to Kibera for a political rally after police officers had blocked entry for vehicles.
This was the highlight of a day that saw NASA leaders and police officers engage in a cat-and-mouse game ahead of Raila Odinga's return from abroad. And Oxikolia followed the events in our reports.
This police officer running apparently to enforce an order stopping NASA leaders from accessing the entrance to Kenya's top airport, the JKIA. And what ensued? Bitter exchanges between Raila Odinga's lieutenants and the men and women in uniform.
Go back. Go back. Go back. It's okay. It's okay.
The NASA leader will be flying back home on Friday after a tour of the United States, and his team was in a dress rehearsal of how they will welcome him back. The police, however, remained adamant. JKIA, according to orders, was not accessible to NASA. It is a secure area.
Let's go.
This sparked a heated exchange.
People are just walking in a fundamental.
Authorized means he has gone through the process because he must pass through the procedures of science so that when he is entering the airport, we know he's secure. That is number one. Where is this coming?
This creeping dictatorship that is coming back to Kenya and turning our country into a banana republic where entering the airport is becoming a matter in which you need a pass. Like, in the old days, during the colonial period, you had to what was called kipande.
Tomorrow we are having not 1 million, 1.5 million. It's a river you cannot stop. Even tanks cannot stop 1 million. So run before we arrive. Tomorrow.
An earlier communication had indicated NASA would later address supporters at Kamkunji grounds, but the grounds had already been barricaded by police, and so James Orengo and his team opted for Plan B, Kibera grounds. They still found their planned march to Kibera a problem. Police officers had blocked roads leading to the slum area and NASA stronghold. NASA politicians outsmarted the men in uniform, choosing to board motorbikes to reach Kibera. But Embakasi East MP Babu Owino and his Ruaraka counterpart TJ Kajwang were not lucky. They were arrested and taken to Kilimani police station.
Wakati niliona wanaanza kusimamisha watu kwa magari, gari yangu nimewachia polisi. Mkiona gari huko kwa bypass ni yangu, nimewachia huko, wakae nayo.
The police maintained that JKIA will only be accessible to NASA leaders who will have passes, but these leaders have called on their supporters to turn up in large numbers to welcome back Raila Odinga.
Any government that lives in the fear of its own people is not worth being in government.
Upon arrival, the former premier will unveil an action plan for the opposition coalition, a plan that will detail the activity of the national resistance movement going forward. Enoch Sikolia, NTV, in the county of Nairobi.
As they remain adamant they will be going to JKI Airport, and the authorities remain adamant they will not be allowed, we will be following this to show you how it plays out. The Jubilee Party is accusing the opposition of hatching a plan to use 850 million shillings from public coffers to the People's Assembly's activities.
The National Assembly Majority Leader Aden Duale says the NASA county bosses have been instructed to raise at least 50 million shillings each.
Duale now wants the Controller of Budget, Agnes Odhiambo, to step in and forestall the intended misuse.
Well, Ken Majungu reports that 8 counties have already signified their compliance by beginning the processes that may also see constitutional amendments.
In a 3-page letter addressed to the Controller of Budget, Aden Duale alleges unauthorized withdrawals of public funds from the counties intended to finance the activities of NASA-backed People's Assemblies. NASA leaders control 17 counties. Each county is allegedly supposed to contribute 50 million shillings. Duale's concern is that these are public funds that will be going into an illegal process, which he says has no backing in law.
So that we have more motions to be debated concerning the people we represent.
The National Assembly Majority Leader says political activities ought to be financed and supported by political parties which are funded by the public. He takes issue with the funds already raised by NASA through the informal channels such as paybill numbers, which he says NASA is yet to account for. Duale says he is within his right to raise these issues as he is the majority leader in the National Assembly that oversees the use of national revenue. He wants the Controller of Budget to caution all counties against financing such activities and to vigilantly monitor the disbursement of county funds. The latest county to debate, approve and adopt the bill on the formation of the People's Assembly is Makueni. The bill will now be forwarded to Makueni Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana, who will also form a select committee to look into the constitution and how to organize a free, fair and credible election. While Makueni becomes the first county in the wider eastern region to pass the bill, the counties of Busia, Siaya, Kakamega, Vihiga, Kisumu, Homa Bay and Migori have already done so. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
Elsewhere now, the bodies of those killed in Kapedo on the border of Baringo and Turkana counties arrived at the Lodwar airstrip in Turkana County to distressed relatives. 3 police officers and an education officer were killed in an ambush in Kapedo, often referred to as the Valley of Death. They are said to have been escorting exam papers when the attack happened. Authorities in Turkana say they've started a security operation to recover the firearms taken from the police officers and flush out the perpetrators.
There's something deeply vexing about the death regions of Kapedo, a place of no shelter or mercy, a land of no man's, and it's easy to see why. This is the latest horror story, an ambush that saw 4 people killed, 3 of them police officers and an education officer, adding to the count of bandit attacks carried out in an almost brazen assurance. Their bodies were brought home to a sea of distraught faces. Authorities say they were escorting examination papers when they were ambushed by an unknown number of armed bandits.
Ni tukio ambalo ni la kinyama, ni tukio ambalo sio mzuri, lakini nataka kuhakikishia wananchi wa sehemu hizo kwamba tumeongeza vikosi vya ulinda usalama ili waweze kwenda kusaka hao majambazi.
The attack happened just a few meters from where 21 police officers were killed in an ambush in 2014. The officers were on a mission to recover a vehicle burned in a botched operation.
People are losing lives. Every day you hear somebody has been killed. Cattle rustlers have come and stolen animals. And in that process, they have left a lot of people dead. Now they are not even attacking, the security, the government security. How can we allow a situation like this to continue?
But despite the deceptive intervals of quiet, fear still reigns in the valley of the shadow of death. In this bleak expanse, life has been marked in death and newspaper front pages.
Tutazidi kupoteza askari mpaka lini? Tutazidi kupoteza watu education mpaka lini? Saa hizi wa Kenya wengine wanafunzi wengine wanafanya examination. Wale wa Turkana East hawafanyi because their maisha yao yako hatarini. So this is not a joke.
Toa mabunduki ambazo zinaua maaskari, Mheshimiwa Rais. Toa mabunduki ambayo inaua rafiki yangu Ibrahim Sheikh, mwalimu mwenzangu ambaye tumefunza naye kwa hii miaka mingi. Na sasa amepata kifo yake kwa barabara tu akipelekea wanafunzi wake mitihani.
But for these communities living in the shadow of the gun, firearms has been a touchy subject. Mop-up efforts haven't worked. The government tried registering the guns. Residents could keep them and be paid a maintenance fee, but they would be closely monitored. It was to be the alternative to disarmament that quickly follows episodes of slaughter. But the government now says it is carrying out a mop-up exercise in a bid to rid the area of all illegal firearms and to recover those stolen from the 3 police officers. Sheila Sendeo, NTV.
Now to a twist in investigations of a separate death. The Director of Public Prosecutions has recalled the investigation file in the case of the death of Nyeri Governor Wahome Gakoro. The DPP's actions came as the state prepared to charge the governor's driver Samuel Kenyajui in Kagumo today. The state had intended to prefer charges of careless driving in the accident that claimed the governor's life. Brenda Wanga reports.
Straight out of hospital, into a police cell and onto the law courts, Samuel Kenyajui, the driver of the late Governor Dr. Wahome Gakoro, was brought to the Kigumo law courts to face charges of careless driving. He was the man behind the steering wheel that fateful morning when his vehicle rammed into a railroad. The impact of that crash left the governor dead and 2 other occupants, himself included, nursing injuries. However, it turned out to be a long wait for Samuel. The court case failed to proceed because the Director of Public Prosecutions hadn't approved the charges that were to be preferred against Samuel. Indeed, as the officers who brought him to court prepared to arraign him, the file containing details of the case were recalled by the DPP, who says he will communicate a fresh date for the case for the driver after a thorough perusal of the file. But while that case stands in abeyance, investigations into the cause of the accident that took the life of the governor continue. Detectives probing the accident are now working with the motor vehicle firm DT Dobby and tire manufacturer Pirelli to try and ascertain what state the vehicle was in mechanically at the time of the crash. This comes as revelations emerge that the deceased had expressed concerns about the same vehicle.
And he had told me about 3 or 4 times, my brother, he gari ndio itaniua. Wambogo, you remember? He had said that 1,000 times. It was a faulty car.
The vehicle had been faulty even before the deceased started using it. The county government had set out to replace it, but hadn't got around to doing it at the time of the accident.
Some money allocated to buy a governor's car, 13 million shillings. When we took over this office, I can tell you, we were handed the sick Mercedes and a sick Prado.
That budget has since been approved. The late governor will be buried at his home this Saturday. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Police in Pangani, Nairobi are holding a suspect linked with vandalism of guardrails along the eastern bypass and parts of the highway near Cabanas. The vandals have been stealing the guardrails and selling them to scrap metal dealers. NTV Steve Juma with the details.
The eastern bypass has made travel easier and reduced perpetual jam city roads for hours. But not all see the roads as just a highway. Scrap metal vandals have seen an opportunity to make money by stealing the guardrails that contractors are putting up on the highway.
Kitu tumewekwa for safety, okay? Cha kwanza. Mimi niko kama kuna mbinu ingetumika au rashibu.
Police from Pangani were in pursuit of the night criminals who have been putting the safety of the road users at risk. The operation was conducted by plainclothes officers. They have been informed by a concerned citizen, which led to the discovery of suspects behind the vandalism in Ngara, Nairobi. At the store in Ngara, police recovered streetlight poles, guardrails, sewer covers, bridges, road railings, telecoms equipment, manhole covers, power installations and road signs. The suspect told the police that the rail are sold at 70 shillings per kilogram.
Sio mimi nanunuaga, mwenye kuniajiri ndio ananunua, mimi kasi yangu ni kuuza tu.
Police arrested him and took him to Pangani police station pending investigation and arrest of other culprits who remain at large. The extent of vandalism and destruction on the eastern bypass and the Cabana stretch to Mombasa Road is alarming.
Wakati barabara inatengenezwa, hao huwa wanasimama pale wanaangalia vile barabara inatengenezwa. Tena hivyo hivyo, wakati baada ya barabara kutengenezwa, inatakana tena waangalie vile barabara inavyoendelea.
Steve Juma, NTV.
We hit the brakes at this point, but we'll take a short break and be back with this story and more.
South Africa takes up a mediation role amid political uncertainty in Zimbabwe.
Welcome back to NTV Tonight. Now, parents of the late baby Samantha Pendo, who was killed during a police operation in Nyalenda Estate in Kisumu, are not happy with the just released IPOA report after investigations. In the report, IPOA indicated that it could not recommend criminal charges against any of the police officers involved in the operation, something the parents say is not fair, as they want the person who killed their child punished.
3 months after the fateful night of the event that led to the death of their child, the pain is still raw. The 6-month-old baby succumbed to injuries sustained in an incident where she was hit on the head with a baton by a police officer during an operation. On Wednesday, IPOA released its report following an investigation into the matter. They exempted criminal charges to any of the police officers involved in the operation, but recommended that police commander who were in charge during that operation be disciplined for being negligent.
Let them get those people who walikuja hapa, those troops wenye letwa hapa, wakatupiga wakaua mtoto wangu. That's the only thing that I want. And that person akuje aniambie sorry for that.
The commanders whose names appear in the report are former Kisumu County Commander Titus Yoma, Kisumu East OCPD Christopher Mutune, DAPC Kisumu Central Benjamin Kosgei, and OCS Kisumu Central John Thiringi. Despite this recommendation, Pendo's parents feel police, together with IPOA, are trying to shield the real perpetrators.
Venye IPOA walichukua mavitu hapa, hizo ma evidence, marungu zao na matiagas, unajua watu waletwa kwa nyumba. It's not true kwa nje. So the truth is out there, ataka wanaficha huyo jamaa ziko tu hapo nje. But one thing I know, justice tutapata tu, no matter what God atatu provide here.
The parents further claim they have been neglected as no one bothered to communicate with them on the investigation. Parents of the late baby Samantha Pendo say they are not satisfied with the report from IPOA. They want the specific officers who carried out operation in this area that led to the death of their child apprehended and punished. They say justice is much more important than compensation. Namukabo Werunga, NTV, Kisumu.
And certainly hope that that family gets justice for their late baby. Elsewhere, the Kenya National Union of Teachers has suspended their by-election to replace its national chairman, Mudzo Nzili, to June next year. The vice-chairman, Wycliffe Omuchei, will act as chairman from December and will also preside over the annual delegates conference as Nzili takes terminal leave. The decision was made by the union's National Executive Council at their meeting in Mombasa. Last week, the Union Secretary-General, Wilson Sossion, said that their constitution requires officials to retire 6 months prior to their due date. Sossion then introduced Omuchei as acting chairman of the union. His decision was met with resistance from Nzili, who wrote a letter to the Ministry of Labour saying he was yet to reach his retirement age. Well, Nzili's letter received a favourable response as the Ministry of Labour stopped the December by-election.
The bone of contention that we have resolved was for us to effectively be replaced through a by-election this December. So the idea, the message that should go is not because we were refusing to go on retirement, but we were resisting being replaced in a by-election.
The 6 months leave, mandatory, pending retirement, remains to be sustained by the union for good reasons. And therefore, the National Executive Council, Brother Muzo Nzili, voluntarily, has not been opposed to retirement. In fact, he has been telling us, bring my retirement letter home during a party. And the issues and his concerns have been properly addressed.
Indeed,
as members of the National Executive Council, which is an organ that makes tremendous decisions about issues affecting the teachers, we embrace the appointment of Brother Wilson Sossion. We pray for him, and we have resolved that we shall maintain him and recognize that apart from being the Secretary General of this giant union, he is going to represent our interest in the National Assembly.
Emissions of greenhouse gases rising from the first time in 3 years have created an extra urgency for the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. Even then, the targets that were set in Paris 2 years ago will still not be enough to achieve the 1.5-degree cap on increases in global temperatures, which will reduce the effects of climate change globally. Andrew Cheng tells us more.
At the beginning of the high-level segment at the Bonn climate talks, only a handful of heads of states were present. Yet the challenge of tackling global warming remains glaring. Here in Bonn, there is still squabbling over several details in the guidelines over how to implement the Paris Agreement. But outside the talks, there appears to be some progress. On Thursday, 20 countries signed an agreement to phase out coal by the year 2030. The fossil fuel is the greatest contributor to global warming, but provides most of the energy for developed countries.
Canada is phasing out coal by 2030, which will help us meet our goal of 90% carbon-free power by 2030. The path to transition away from coal looks different for all of us, but I know we're all here for the same reasons.
However, some of the biggest users of coal like China, USA, India, Germany and Russia are still to sign up.
Coal is literally choking our cities and our people. Around the world, we see close to 1 million deaths a year from air pollution created by burning coal.
Disagreements at the talks have mostly been about finances and especially what should happen before the year 2020, when the implementation of the Paris Agreement begins. Developing countries accuse their rich counterparts of not doing enough to pay for damages and losses suffered as a result of climate change, and instead demanding that insurance companies take care of that.
The commitment made in Paris of the $100 billion per year of support to the developing world from 2020 must be respected. And I was very happy to witness today President Macron saying that even if the US will not implement its commitments on that, Europe should replace the United States. It's absolutely essential that the developing world will have access to the levels of funding that were committed in Paris.
Kenya's technical teams have been part of the negotiations, intending to get the best deal for the country.
The reason why I took this job, one, is to see at least something change in the lives and livelihoods of Kenyans, given the kind of impacts that we see in the country. One, for example, you see the devastating impacts of drought on the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan lives and livelihoods. And we need to make sure that we secure the right funding and the right kind of investment to help these people cope with the current impacts of climate change.
The talks here are expected to come to an end on Friday, and by that time, the delegates representing more than 200 countries are supposed to have come up with ways to ensure that countries reduce their emissions in the way that they have pledged to, but that there is also support for poorer countries for them to be able to develop sustainably. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Well, from that, let's take you to Zimbabwe now. And South African government ministers are in Harare for crisis talks with ousted President Robert Mugabe and military leaders who have seized control. They're trying to reach a deal on the future of Zimbabwe and the man who has led the country for 37 years and who's now under house arrest.
Savangwa were ready to enter negotiations to form a transitional government.
with Fire Awards 2017.
Good evening. Welcome to NTV Business. I am Hudayfa Adin. Now, the Privatization Commission has commenced consultations with the Council of Governors to identify sustainable solutions to the bottlenecks currently facing the operations of the state-owned sugar milling companies. The Council of Governors is just one among the stakeholders that the Commission is engaging following a recent court ruling allowing the privatization of state-owned sugar millers. The High Court directed that further consultative engagements be held between the national government and county governments to determine appropriate strategies for privatization. The privatization of the sugar millers has been a protracted affair. Inefficiencies in production processes, high cost of operations, corruption and mismanagement has seen their contribution to the local economies reduce even as Kenya continues to import sugar to meet the growing demand. The Chief Executive of the Institute of Pension Management, Anthony Odhiambo, is calling for enrollment in pension schemes to be enhanced through innovative products to secure the future of formal and informal workers in the country. Odhiambo says the pension sector is worth over 1 trillion shillings with an average annual growth rate of 15.6%. He was speaking at the inaugural pension awards in the country. Some of the winners include Standard Chartered Bank, which won the Fund Custodian of the Year. Love Fund was named the Best Managed Public Sector Scheme. Kengen won the Best Managed Occupational Scheme as Kenendia won the Approved Issue of the Year. Lab Trust CEO Jose Akili was named the Pension Sector Personality of the Year, while Joseph Rono, also of Lab Trust, was named the Chief Investment Officer of the Year.
One of the mandates was basically to enhance, to build capacity in terms of the pension industry in this country and East Africa, and that is through professional training. Number two is that we have corporate trainings that are ongoing.
Now to some agriculture, where the invasion of fall armyworms in different parts of the country is compelling a joint response by the national and county governments. Tharaka Nithi County is one of those which is working hand in hand with the national government in a bid to eliminate the armyworms, which pose a potent threat to farm output. National government has provided 500 litres of assorted pesticides, overalls, pumps and protective gear to combat the armyworms. Farmers in the county are being sensitized on how to safeguard their yields as means of ensuring food security. On Tuesday, the government received 50 million shillings worth of apparatus from the Food and Agriculture Organization to help eradicate fall armyworms ahead of a 2.3 billion shilling state-led strategy to curb the destructive pests.
Hii mdundu inaweza maliza mashamba yote, kwa hivyo lazima tufanye spraying na turudie kila wiki mbili. Na tumesema mtu akiona shamba yake hata kama iko nzuri namna gani, lazima uangalie kama hiyo mdudu iko. Kama iko unapiga na unapiga mpaka kwa jirani. Na tumesema Agricultural Extension Officer wetu wakuwe tayari kutembea saa hii, kwa sababu saa hii ndio wakulima wanaohitaji zaidi kwa sababu ya hiyo mumea ambaye inakuwa saa hii na mdudu anakula.
Now, have you ever seen a man going to pay dowry but with neither livestock, cash, mobile money or any of the mainstream measures of value, yet still pays? In Naivasha, one man has done it. Anthony Mburu used the precursor to his wedding to Elizabeth John to also display the marriage between tradition and technology. He paid the dowry using Bitcoin. Dan Mwangi takes us through the day that saw bride's parents receive the promise to get multiple value of their dowry.
The groupings that precede a day of significant events. Groupings that are made up of relatives and friends, excitement, with a bit of representation by relative nervousness. From the meetup point and on to the bride's parents' home, where the knock at the gate is not done with knuckles, but by punchy songs and dancing at the gate while awaiting to be allowed in. These are some of the curves and crosses in the signature of today's Kenyan dowry payment ceremony. The groom is easily noticeable through his tense looks, in all likelihood trying to make sense of the day's activities and symbolism down to the cents. On this day, for a number of communities, one of the main points in the program is getting down to what is most relevant to the phrase business of the day, negotiations. In Naivasha, in the county of Nakuru, Andrew Mburu is on his phone, likely the same gadget he used to make the all-important transactions.
What stands out today is that I've been able to build a dowry in Bitcoin. Okay, so it's a very fascinating thing. Planning such an event 11 months ago, kept my $200. 11 months later, we were ready to pay the dowry. The amazing thing is 10 times more.
Considering the broadly limited knowledge of digital currencies, it came as a welcome surprise when his in-laws' response to the idea of paying dowry via Bitcoin was favorable.
When we talked to parents about it, they were ready to receive it, and it was a good investment for them because they can just keep it, and in 6 months it doubles, like they have double the dowry.
This was music to his ears and a deflation of his nervousness that he did not have to coin bits and pieces of excuses as to why he went that route for such a non-digital event, one that for some communities has experienced an evolution in payments, from actual livestock to equivalents such as cash and checks, then mobile money, and now digital currency. This specific event not only displays the marriage of two people, but also of tradition and technology. From the experience, Mburu has his word of advice.
All young guys out there planning to do their dowry next year, December, they don't know how. You just need to accumulate your few Bitcoins now, just leave them. And I believe next year, you don't have to call your friends, like it won't be a big hassle.
Bitcoins are stored in a digital wallet, which is akin to a virtual bank account that allows users to send or receive Bitcoins, pay for goods, or save their money. The value of Bitcoins through the years has experienced volatility, but this year, the price of a single Bitcoin has soared fivefold to about $7,000, which translates to about 726,000 Kenyan shillings. The manner in which Bitcoins are mined, however, requires an entire presentation to break it down into bits that are easy to understand. Anthony's confidence in Bitcoins is strengthened by virtue of his circle of friends who are big on the digital currency and have faith in what it can achieve.
It can give you the financial freedom. Us here, together with my fellow partners here, we work at home. You don't have to have an office. You can do it through the computer.
Just the other day in Feb, a few months back, one Bitcoin was selling at $900? Yeah, $900. But today, the 11th of November, this thing's worth $6,500 USD.
As some people are still getting the hang of transactions through technological advancements such as mobile money, cryptocurrency is a whole other ballgame, with this group not playing any games about it. They say one can invest in machines that can help them make more than just a bit of coins.
The machines are costing at $70,000 and the machines mined every day, day and night, 24 hours.
Central Bank Governor Patrick Njoroge on Tuesday told the Global Financial Forum in Dubai that regulators have to be careful that all risks are taken care of, including those associated with cryptocurrencies, adding that the Kenyan government is very open to innovation. With digital money, governments are concerned about taxation and their lack of control over the currency. Currently, Anthony and Elizabeth have not only embraced each other, but also technology at a significant point in their lives. Dan Mwangi, NTV Business.
Interesting story there, but still on Bitcoin, a number of Kenyans are setting aside significant amounts of time and money to invest in the cryptocurrency whose modus operandi is alien to many. Buy a copy of the Business Daily tomorrow to find out how Kenyans who have invested in Bitcoins are faring. You'll get to know why Eileen Mugambi, who quit her job at a local telecommunication company and spent 2.5 years dabbling in small businesses without success, is now a firm believer in the power of Bitcoins to transform one's financial health. All that in tomorrow's copy of the Business Daily. Now that has been the latest in the world of business. I am Hudayfa Aden.
NTV Business News with Fire Awards.
Kwale Governor Salim Vuria and Taveta MP Naomi Shaban can breathe easy as petitions that had been filed challenging their wins were struck out by courts.
Meanwhile, a bid by former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero to be joined in a petition challenging the election of Governor Gideon Mbuvi Sonko was disallowed by the court. Peter Mwangangi with the details.
In Mombasa, former Kwale governorship candidate Chirao Ali Makwere was in court as Justice Mugure Thande gave her ruling. She said that failure to enjoin Kwale Deputy Governor Fatma Achani in the proceedings rendered the petition filed by Mwamlole Mbwana incurably defective. Thande said the Deputy Governor is a necessary party in the election petition. Celebrations broke out in Kwale as a result of the ruling.
Hata kura ingerudishwa leo, watu wangempigia tena Mvurya kura kwa sababu wale ambao walikuwa wanashindana nao hakuna mwenye amefanya kazi kumliko Gavana Mvurya.
Tunasikia wengine walikuwa kila asubuhi wanafunga tai wanaenda kotini. Sisi tulikuwa tunajua kwamba wananchi wa Kwale walitupigia kwa haki, hatukuibia mtu yoyote kura.
In Nairobi, Judge Msaga Mbogoli ruled that an application by former Governor Evans Kidero to be enjoined in a petition against Governor Gideon Mbuvi Sonko lacked merit, dismissed it with costs. Kidero had said he had new evidence to help the court reach a fair judgment, but Sonko claimed the move would be prejudicial to him. In Taita Taveta, a case challenging Taveta MP Dr. Naomi Shaban's win was also dismissed for lack of merit. Voi High Court Judge Jacqueline Kamau ruled that the affidavits filed were shoddy and that the petitioner Maurice Mutiso failed to deposit the security of $500,000 shillings as required by law.
Wasiwasi isikuwa nao kwa sababu nilipita kwa halali. Watu waliopiga kura Taveta waliamua kwa mimi ni mbunge wao kwa awamu ya 4.
In Rift Valley, a voter who had challenged the re-election of Nandi Hills MP Alfred Keter now wants to withdraw the matter from the court. Robert Kibet said he made the decision after a period of soul-searching and consulting with his family and the people of Nandi Hills.
We were before court today seeking the indulgence of court to allow my client to leave this case.
However, a new petitioner, Bernard Kibor Kitur, who contested the seat as an independent candidate, wants the court to consider him as a fresh petitioner in the matter.
He feels that his rights will be infringed because he had a stake in it. Having garnered around 13,800 votes, that will go to waste if he doesn't challenge that decision.
Judge George Kimondo will rule on whether the petition will be withdrawn on the 23rd of November. Peter Mongangi, NTV, Mombasa.
Elsewhere, the Nairobi Women's Hospital continues to hold 12 patients over unpaid medical bills.
6 of the patients are at the Ongatarongai Health Facility and 6 others have been transferred today to other branches.
Among those detained are 2 women and 4 men, including a Form 3 student who's been there for 11 months for failing to raise 2.8 million shillings after being treated.
Hospital staff took particulars of the held patients a day after NTV exposed the happenings at the Ongatarongai facility and also questioned them on how the media managed to access the facility.
The hospital has not addressed the issue of holding the patients, even after it was alleged that they've stopped treating them, including the old man whose health is deteriorating and requires special medical attention.
Hospital officials stopped receiving our calls and are yet to respond to the email sent seeking clarification.
Welcome to NTV Sport. I'm Watson Karuma. The Sekafa Senior Challenge Cup will now kick off on the 3rd of December when Kenya will take on Rwanda. In the draw announced today, the organizers confirmed that the date changes as well as the absence of Somalia and Sudan. Hosts Kenya in Pool A, which has Rwanda, Tanzania, guest team Libya and Zanzibar. Defending champions Uganda headline Pool B alongside guests Zimbabwe, Burundi, Ethiopia and South Sudan. Harambee Stars open their campaign, of course, I said earlier, against Rwanda before facing Libya 2 days later. Kakamega, Kisumu and Nakuru will host the matches with Nairobi and Machakos standby venues. The last time Kenya hosted the tournament was in 2013 and they emerged the winners after beating Sudan 2-0 in the final. Premier League title-winning coach Dylan Kerr of Gor Mahia has been named Coach of the Month for September. Kerr led Gor Mahia to 5 victories and a draw in September, which led the club to a 16th league title with 5 games to spare. Gor beat Bandari, Sofapaka, Tusker, Chemelil and Nzoia Sugar, while the goalless draw was against Thika United. Kerr hopes to maintain the streak when the champs wrap up the season against Sony Sugar on Saturday in Kisumu, after which Gor Mahia will be presented with a trophy. 24-year-old Evelyn Wairimu Karaba became the latest betting jackpot winner after scooping 20 million Kenya shillings from a 399 shilling bet. Wairimu had only been playing for 3 months and correctly guessed 13 out of 13 matches on the jackpot. The office assistant was introduced to sports betting by a friend, she says, and continued playing alone, although she did not think that she would win the jackpot so soon. She will receive free financial advice from Bettin at her discretion. Murdered Kenya Simba's player Mike Okombe was laid to rest at his father's home in Kisa, Kakamega County today. The 27-year-old was stabbed to death on Saturday, the 4th of November, at a party in Nakuru. Okombe was also part of the national 15 side until his death.
Detained sworn by being involved. Some recoveries that are anticipated in it.
You will appreciate don't make believe the plan.
Now, Peru became the last team to qualify for the Russia 2018 World Cup, and they did that by beating New Zealand 2-0 in Lima last night. Of course, it was an exciting game with Farfan and Ramos scoring those goals. Now, Peru brings the total teams that have qualified for the for the Football World Cup, that is, to 32. And FIFA has seeded the teams that will be competing in Russia. And in Pot 1, the hosts, who are the lowest seeded team in the World Cup. So in that team, we have Germany, who are the defending champions. We have Portugal, Belgium, Brazil, Argentina, Poland, and of course France. They're in that Pot 1. And in Pot 2, the other seeded teams, and it's very interesting to see how the seeding is going on. Those people who don't believe that the FIFA rankings are important, they are indeed very important, because in the second pot, we have Spain in position 8, most probably edged out from the first pot by the host Russia. Now, I will tell you that these teams cannot be in the same pool. However, these teams, some of these teams can be in the same pool as those teams in Pot 1. Now, of course, we have the third pot because there are a couple of teams, 32 in total, and we have in Pot 3, we have Denmark leading that 19th place in the FIFA rankings. We have Costa Rica. We have 3 African teams in this pool: Tunisia, Senegal, and Egypt. Iran is also in that Pot 3. Remember, when the draw is done on the 1st of December in Moscow, these teams will be knowing what group they will be playing in next year in June in Moscow, in the whole of Russia. Now, Nigeria is in the last pot, and in this pot we have Serbia, Morocco, the other African country, and of course Panama and Saudi Arabia. The draw will be conducted on the 1st of December, as I told you earlier, in Moscow, and we'll be waiting to see what pool the African teams will be in. Of course, Russia lucky to be in Pot 1, and we'll be getting other teams in the other pot. So something we're looking forward to. Moving on, Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger has said that his side need to maintain their strength at home in order to make up ground on the teams above them in the Premier League. Arsenal are 6th in the league, 12 points behind leaders Manchester City, and host 3rd place Tottenham Hotspur in a tightly contested North London derby on Saturday.
14 minutes past 10, we end NTV Tonight here. Thank you to Flora Tieno for the sign language interpretation. My name is Masai. Good night.
I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Bye-bye.